Hi, we have with us Jennifer Armstrong, and she is going to tell us about her book for children or for parents, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's right.
So go ahead, tell us. Sorry, my hair's sticking up.
Okay, so The Lion's Whiskers is a project that I am doing with a friend who is a child and family therapist. My background is as a children's book author, and we met through our children, and we started talking a lot about the sorts of challenges that we could foresee our children needing to deal with in the future. And we thought that as we discussed it, we realized that we had, from our very different professional backgrounds, reached a lot of very similar conclusions about courage and about what it takes to meet a challenge. And so we started putting together this project, and it's about how to raise children to have courage. And one of the first things that we realized that we had to do was to define what courage is, because you ask 20 people and you'll get 20 different answers. So what we concluded was that one of the reasons that courage is a difficult thing for people to talk about is that it actually has several different dimensions. So we talk about physical courage, moral courage, social courage, intellectual courage, emotional courage, and spiritual courage. And one of the reasons that people often feel that they themselves are not courageous is because they're only thinking about some dimension of courage that they don't have, right? I could never run into a burning building, but I'm not a person with a lot of physical courage, but I think I have a fair amount of other kinds of courage. So one of the functions of this project is to help parents specifically to recognize not only the types of courage that they already have themselves, but to begin to identify the kinds of courage that they can recognize in their children, and to support those, and also to help to support the ones that maybe are not as strong yet. So we talk a lot about how, what is moral courage, and how do you, what are some of the qualities that are associated with moral courage, and therefore how would you try to help your children to develop that. So because I come from a children's book background and have spent a lot of time reading myths and legends and this sort of thing, I think of this very much in terms of hero's journey. Childhood is it's one hero's journey after another. Every stage of development, there's a new set of challenges, there's a new transformation. And so I find it very useful as a parent to think of what my daughter goes through in these terms. And so, yes, exactly. The times when I see that she is, reluctant to heed the call to adventure, for example, and trying to surround her with appropriate mentors or guides, so that she can be prepared for these challenges and meet them in an appropriate way. So my role in this project is to talk about parenting and childhood in terms of the hero's quest and the hero's journey. And I share a lot of traditional stories, traditional legends and myths and so forth. Right now, the project is a blog. We've been sort of writing the book as a sort of public first draft, and trying to see what is the relationship to courage that people have. What is what are people most curious about? How do people find us? And what we have discovered is that people are finding us from all over the world, largely by doing searches on questions like, what is moral courage? Define emotional courage. What is social courage? There seems to be a great interest in the topic of courage from basically everywhere. I mean, we have people from all over the world who visit our blog and read what we are talking about, including from places where, there are really significant challenges, in Egypt and in other parts of the Middle East, for example. We have a lot of readers there. And I find it very inspiring that we have something to tell the people who are living with, pretty significant struggles.
Challenges, yeah.
And challenges that what we're talking about is actually resonating with them. So, we've really been framing this project all along as a hero's journey, talking about the hero. What is a hero? What is heroism? Why do so many people, for example, try to they downplay their own heroism, or they say, "Oh, I'm not a hero. Anyone would have done that." So we're really trying to take on this whole topic in a pretty proactive way, and it's been really quite fascinating. So why don't you ask me some more questions about that?
So you've actually used that model in your project.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we are, because whenever you use, you start talking about courage, the word hero immediately comes up.
Right.
And so, I can't say that I'm an expert on, Joseph Campbell and the whole model, but I've done, a fair amount of reading about it over the years, and I have written a lot of books for kids, and certainly in juvenile literature, which is largely associated with, sort of coming of age sorts of stories and that sort of thing. That is the hero's journey, always, right?
Yeah.
There's always some call to adventure and some, reluctance on the part of the hero, and some, helpers and guides along the way. So, it really is, it is foundational to children's literature. So I've been sort of swimming in this for, about 25 years without actually, really, making a more scholarly study of it. So I have always been thinking of this exploration of courage in terms of, what is a hero, and the fact that, I think one of the things that is confusing to people is when they don't recognize the role that they're playing in a given situation. There are a lot of people who always think that they're the hero, right? In any given situation, they think that they're the hero. They think that they're the protagonist, without recognizing that, sometimes you're actually playing the role of the antagonist, or sometimes you're playing the role of the sidekick, exactly, or the wise mentor. We play a lot of different roles, and if we become very self-absorbed, we think that everybody is simply a sidekick to us, and that anything that happens is about us, right? And so there tends to be a confusion about when is it your turn to act, and when is it your turn to step back. Certainly when it comes to parenting, we see, I think anybody can observe that there are parents who think that their children are their sidekicks in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So that rather than recognizing that the child
has
needs
their
to
own
be
journey.
Yeah, that the child has a journey, and that, in a particular situation, the child may be the hero, and it is the parent's job to just get out of the way. you know?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the kind of stuff that we are talking about in the Lion's Whiskers, about how do you raise a child to be able to recognize, to develop, for example, an interior locus of control. The recognition that I am capable of affecting, what happens to me, rather than simply being a passive, I don't know, things just happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's an external locus of control. The belief that external forces are in control of everything.
Right.
And so to develop an internal locus of control, the recognition that I have, my own agency. I can do things in the world. I am responsible. I can make things happen. I can make a decision about where I wish to go. I have choice. So, that kind of thing is, from my partner's point of view, as a psychologist and a clinician, this is the language of psychology that she uses about, things like locus of control. As a writer, one of the lessons that I learned early on in writing books for children was that the kids had to figure it out themselves. In books for kids, in fact, I've written about this in a scholarly magazine. Many books for kids actually take place in urban environments, because in urban environments, kids can get around on their own, right? Mm-hmm. So in a suburban environment, kids have to get a ride wherever they go, right? They have to get a ride from mom, or they have to get a ride from dad, or somebody's got to pick them up and take them to the mall or wherever it might be. But in a book, the hero has to be able to be the one who is initiating the action, right? Mm-hmm. So it's one of the cardinal rules of writing for children, that the children have to be the ones who have this independence and this decision making and the ability to initiate the action. And so, I think that this is, another reason why many books for children are fantasies or historical, or in other words, set someplace where it's a lot easier or more plausible for the kids to be getting around on their own.
I never thought about that before, but yeah.
Yeah, so, the way that the majority of American kids live, I think they are extremely dependent, right? They live in places and in circumstances where either there is no way for them to get around on their own, or they're not allowed to get around on their own because their parents are hypervigilant, or, there can be a variety of reasons for this. But without the ability to develop independence, toddlerhood, learning how to figure out, where am I, and do you know the name of the street that you live on? And if I stand right here, do you think you can walk to the end of the block by yourself and then walk back? This is the sort of stuff that we talk about. You don't want to wait until a kid is 17 and gets behind the wheel of a car to experience independence, right? It has to be developed. And so, we talk about courage being a sort of like a muscle that you can begin to train from early on with challenges that are appropriate to the age of the kid. which are achievable, and begin to educate the child to the fact that she can do things on her own. She is capable of doing these things. Self-esteem only comes from achievement, right? You can't give somebody self-esteem. They have to, they have to do something and then say, hey, look what I did. If kids don't have a chance to do things, without a parent, sort of hovering over them, at every moment, then they don't begin to recognize that they are capable of doing things. And then they cannot recognize themselves as the heroes in their own stories. And then then they would be, forever taking a very passive role, expecting somebody else to solve the problem, or somebody else to kill the dragon, or somebody else to make the journey.
So
without
your
knowing
blog is geared towards parents and how to, and getting them to empower their children to be their own hero.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And so because this is a departure for me from the books that I've been writing for the last 25 years. My agent has the book proposal, and she's very excited about it. But in some ways, although I'm fairly well known as a children's book author, I am not known as an author for adults on parenting. So our hope is that it actually will be a book within a year or so. But meanwhile, it's a blog, and it's a very exciting project because with all the kinds of analytics that you can use on a website, to figure out where people are coming from and how they find you, it's really quite interesting to see how people find us and what brought them to us. There seems to be a universal interest and desire to understand what is courage and how can I develop it in myself.
And where can people find this blog?
Well, it's called Lion's Whiskers, so the website is just www.lionswhiskers.com, okay. And it's full of really great essays, legends, tales, hands-on activities that parents can do with kids. It's also appropriate, of course, for teachers and other educators to use as well.
Okay.
So we've had all kinds of people coming, and although of course our intent is to be writing this for adults, we also find that there are a lot of people. Our intent is to write this for parents. We also have a lot of readers who are not parents but are just interested in the topic of courage and how to develop it in themselves. Oh, in themselves. Okay. Yes, exactly. Ironically, of course, when we're talking about how to empower children, what we're really trying to do is empower the parents. To have the courage to let go. To let go. To let your child walk to school alone, or to let your child go on the overnight camp out with friends, or whatever it is, at whatever stage the child is. Right. A lot of the time the kid's totally ready to do it. It's the parent who's not ready. So right. So it's the parents as often as the kids who need to develop courage. Yes, the courage because it's a scary world. Or you feel like it is. You feel like it is. It's one of the things about intellectual courage, of course, is to question the assumptions that seem to govern our lives. And just taking a topic like child abduction, when people say, oh, how could you let your child walk to school, on her own? What about, the scary people? Well, if you actually, get information about, what are the statistics on child abduction, you discover that it's entirely blown out of proportion, and that, the statistics about child abduction are nothing that would lead you to think that your child is in any imminent, any more danger walking to school than certainly than riding on a school bus, so,
Right.
So yeah, a lot of times we feel that we live in a dangerous world, but if we have our eyes wide open and we really ask questions, we discover that maybe our world is dangerous in ways that we are not aware of, and it's not dangerous in the ways that we think it is.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this sounds like a very interesting project, and
Thank you.
I'm going to go check out your website.
Thank you.
I've been thinking about getting my grandson a little city bus pass so he could do various things on his own, and trying to decide if he's old enough for that. And he's almost 14, so I'm sure he is.
Well, sure. I mean, the thing is, if you don't just throw the kid into the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
Right. You give him swimming lessons. So if he's already used the buses, then he probably is ready to do it on his own. If he's never used the buses, then ride the bus with him,
right.
For a few times, and then he can do it on his own.
Right.
So, that's the kind of approach that we are trying to encourage parents to take, is to give their kids the opportunity to practice these activities so that they can do them independently when they're old enough.
All right. Well, thanks for being on the show.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It was very inspiring to talk to you about the Children's Heroes Journey.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay.